Hello everyone and welcome to a video on our first deck tech for the Constructed Criticism YouTube channel. It's a deck that a lot of people have been asking about on Twitter and things like that. So Manny and I are going to go over... Manny?
Temur Eldrazi for you.
Yeah, Manny, how did we come up with Temur Eldrazi? What have we been doing? Let's start with like the starting point of where we came up with the deck.
From the ground up. So you love Temur, as anybody who listens to our podcast knows. It's your favorite thing probably for the last year and a half. You got to the PT with it. You've had great results with it. It's got a lot of powerful cards, and we said, hey, let's give it a facelift.
Okay, so let's go over the deck list and just run down the deck list first, and then we'll go over individual card choices. So we have 2 Den Protector, 3 Matter Reshaper, 1 Nissa Vastwood Seer, 4 Rattleclaw Mystic, 4 Savage Knuckleblade, 3 Thought-Knot Seer, 3 Oath of Nissa, 3 Fiery Impulse, 1 Spatial Contortion, 3 Stubborn Denial. We have 24 lands, which we'll get to in a second, but we have 2 Sarkhan Unbroken, 3 Crater's Claws, 2 Roasts, 2 Treasure Cruise. We have 2 Blighted Cataract, which has been pretty good in the deck. We'll get into that in a minute. 2 Cinder Glade, 2 Forest, 1 Lumbering Falls, 2 Mountain, 1 Prairie Stream, 4 Shivan Reef, 2 Windswept Heath, 4 Wooded Foothills, and 4 Yavimaya Coast. So let's talk about the main deck, and then we'll get into the sideboard later. So the first thing that we want to highlight is, is probably some of the new cards. So Oath of Nissa is one that I like. Pretty important in the deck.
Yeah, I mean, you're not doing almost anything meaningful turn 1, but when you cast Oath of Nissa, it feels like you're doing a lot, right? It feels like your opening hand is now 9 cards. It feels so much better.
It feels very powerful, and it also makes it so that you have other card choices interesting. So you'll notice that we only have 3 Thought-Knot Seer, 3 Matter Reshaper, 1 Nissa. The thing about this is that the 3 Oath of Nissa leads us so that we have more of the cards that we want when we want them. It also means that there are cards that are, if a card is important in our deck that we'd maybe pay 2 of, that is a non-creature, non-land, non-planeswalker, we want more of them. Hence why we go all the way down here to the 3 Crater's Claws, because it's so much of your end game and things like that, that when we started with 2, it wasn't enough. We wanted the third one, because sometimes you're going to bottom them with your Oath of Nissa. This is Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, and with that card, Crater's Claws feels like it's pivotal to this deck, like it's a linchpin. I think without Crater's Claws, this probably couldn't be a deck.
The other thing that you'll notice is there's only 10 colorless sources. This means that Oath of Nissa is also acting as pseudo-colorless sources when we need to grab them. Oftentimes, she will grab things like a Shivan Reef or a Yavimaya Coast, so that way it's still fixing your mana it's basically grabbing a tri-land for you.
Right.
So Oath of Nissa pretty important in the deck. The other thing that so we've already talked about kind of what Oath of Nissa is doing and why certain cards are in the deck in their numbers because of Oath of Nissa. It did make serious impact. In fact, we went down from the 3 Sarkhan I was playing originally all the way down to 2 because we didn't need as many. Oath of Nissa does a lot of work in the deck, as you can see. The other thing that happened is we actually went down a Fiery Impulse and went up a Spatial Contortion because the mana was good enough to play the card.
Excellent.
It also always kills a 3 toughness creature, which Fire Impulse unfortunately does not. So
right, and I mean, and you have so many things you can do with it too. I mean, like if somebody blocks your Rattleclaw and you're done with it, you can bring it down possibly to 2 toughness and get rid of it.
Yeah, I think that the amount of work that Spatial Contortion was doing for us has been great in the few games that we've tested that card. So
it's almost always castable.
Yeah, let's go into Thought-Knot Seer and why this card's important in the deck. So this is giving you something that you kind of didn't have an option of having before in the deck, and in the mirror you have Rattleclaw Mystic to cast it before your opponents.
Right.
So yeah, Thought-Knot Seer offers something very different in the deck that you don't have without it. You don't have the options that you have with Thought-Knot Seer when he's not in the deck, basically, right?
Right, yeah. Hand Disruption just isn't something you're doing in these colors really ever.
Exactly. So being able to get that hand disruption in there and like take your opponent's best card, oftentimes they can't even kill the 4/4. So like it just sits there and attacks them, and like you just got to take the card that could have killed the Thought-Knot Seer, which is definitely something that you weren't getting in Rug before. The other card that we see here that kind of replaced the interaction we were having with Raptor in the deck is Matter Reshaper, which after a ton of testing, like it's just good. Like
it's always good. I mean, it at the very, very worst draws you a card, which is excellent.
Yeah, first renditions of the deck had things like Hangerback Walker, and that interaction's like not your favorite, but it's still fine. But in this rendition of the deck, like the worst thing that you can do is hit a Den Protector to draw a Den Protector, or if you want, you can put the Den Protector in play. Like, who cares? Like,
yeah.
It's great.
If you're on an aggressive plan against maybe a much larger deck, then you're going to want to jam that Den Protector and just go.
Yeah, exactly. And in the ones that you want the card advantage from the Den Protector, you just put the Den Protector in your hand. So all of that is great. The things that you'll notice, there's the one of Nissa. She's been great in testing. Like, she's good against aggro, good against control, good against midrange. Just like this one of card that's good in every matchup. So always something to be looking out for like cards that you want in your deck.
Right.
And then obviously we have Rattleclaw Mystic that gives us ramp. We can even play it face down to play an early Sarkhan the Unbroken the following turn, which is great if that's where you're at in that matchup. Anything else you want to say about the main deck?
Just that I think it's very good. Crater's Claws gives you quite a bit of reach in the mid to late game. You can hit him for 5, 6, sometimes even 7 and just put him down. The Roast can handle anything in Standard right now that you're really worried about. And the Treasure Cruises and Blighted Cataracts are just fuel, just straight gas.
That's where I wanted to go to next, is kind of the mana base. So as you can see, we have 10 colorless sources to cast our colorless spells, plus Oath of Nissa to try and help us get them. We also have a fetch land mana base of 4 Wooded Foothills and 2 Windswept Heath to grab our Cinder Glades, our mountains, and our Prairie Stream. To just give us an atypical Rug mana base. You'll notice that we only have 1 Lumbering Falls right now. That, I'm not sure if it needs to be the red one or the Lumbering Falls. It could easily go between the two of them. Right now the deck has I believe 8, 10, 12, 14. So right now it has 15 green sources, which you could go, which I think is correct because of Oath of Nissa. Like, you want your green sources to be the most in the deck. Mm-hmm. And then Blighted Cataract has been, I love it. It's been great.
Good, yeah, just great. You need that little push.
Yeah. So next up we have our sideboard. So we have a few packages, I want to say. So against things like, let's say that we're playing against something like Rally the Ancestors. So in our sideboard, we have 2 Outpost Siege, 2 Disdainful Stroke, 2 Negate, and 4 Radiant Flames for that matchup. Pretty easy. In that matchup, you're going to want to take out things. Nissa's not going to be great in that matchup. A lot of the times, because you're bringing in Radiant Flames, you actually don't want Rattleclaw Mystic. And it's even possible that you might not win your Matter Reshapers in that matchup. So you kind of change your deck up to be this very grindy control deck that plays pretty cheap threats that are larger than their creatures, and then you back it up with counter spells. So in that matchup, you become this deck that plays 3 mana 4/4s with Negate up, and you wait to play your spells until you can leave up counter spells, or you can wipe the board with Radiant Flames and kill all of their guys and keep your Savage Knuckleblade in play.
Right, yeah, you're really trying to take control, grab the reins, and dictate the tempo of the match, where you want it to go, and know that your cards are going to be better than theirs in the end.
Exactly. Then the other thing that we have here is, let's say you're playing against a control deck or a midrange deck. You have a Den Protector, you have your Whisperwood Elementals, and you still have your Outpost Sieges, and depending on the matchup, Negates or Disdainful Strokes. Right. So once again, in those matchups, you want to board out things like Fiery Impulse and Spatial Contortion. Maybe even in some matchups against control, for example, you want to board out Roast. Yeah. Maybe maybe against things like Abzan, that's not quite where you're going, where instead you want to board out maybe a little bit differently, maybe go down to 2 Rattleclaw Mystics, depending on the player or the draw, things like that. And then against aggro, obviously you have all 4 Radiant Flames and Encase and Ice, which Encase and Ice, by the way, has served a pretty important role in the fact that it can get rid of meaningful creatures in red and green decks. So
that and the mana efficiency of being able to cast it at instant speed.
Yeah, so you got to cast it at instant speed, so it's an instant speed way to deal with things like Mantis Rider, or other things in your deck. This it deals with most of the flyers in the format that you're worried about in Mantis Rider, Storm Chaser, Mage, things like that.
Right, Ojutai.
Yeah, it can keep an Ojutai tap. No, it can't keep an Ojutai tap.
It can't. Not at all. Not even.
But also, like, it can legitimately make things not in your way anymore, and it can kill threats that you're worried about in specific games. And it also is the inclusion that comes in against the mono red decks, possibly even Negate. So that's kind of it for the deck. If you have any questions, leave a comment, and we'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, and if you haven't listened to our podcast, give us a try.
Yeah, check it out, constructedcriticism.com. It's also here on the YouTube channel. Don't forget that this kind of content is brought to you by our Patreon, so check it out at patreon.com/ccmtg. And we'll see you guys all next time.